So I did something really fun coming into 2024, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about my initial thoughts, and then maybe at the end of the year I will discuss a lot more of my experience. So I started a storygraph profile, and I've slowly been making storygraph my own, and I'm enjoying it so far. So I guess I'll explain to you what made me want to change over from Goodreads to the storygraph app. I heard about the storygraph like 2 or maybe 3 years ago, maybe 2, I don't know when it first came out, but I think it was in the beta, I don't know how you pronounce it, phase of its site, I guess. It was very new. I remember trying it out and wanting to do a video about setting it up and everything, but I had so much trouble seeing the app on my phone because everything was like the background was white and the text was like really light blue, and I'm blind, as you know, so it was really hard for me to see the text, to even do the survey and everything like that. And back then I don't think they had an app, but recently when I signed up this time around, they do have an app, and I really like it. I like the way it looks now. So yeah, now that I'm using it, I find it a lot more accessible than Goodreads. And I guess the other thing that really pushed me to do it this year is the fact that I was listening to Books Unbound, and Ariel and Raylene talk a lot at the end of the year about their reading statistics, so like how many books they read of a certain genre, what is the average year book published came out that they've read, and everything like that. And I've always wanted to understand more of my like reading taste and my reading habits. I'm just not a very statistics kind of pie graph, I'm not a mathematical person, so I just, the idea of doing that, like trying to set that up for my own reading, just felt really daunting. But then I remembered Storygraph and I was like, maybe I will try it. So those are kind of the two things that made me want to try it. Now, having explained to you why I decided to finally join the Storygraph, here are my, I guess, initial thoughts. One of the first things I noticed alongside the pie graph element is the choice of community on Storygraph versus Goodreads. The way I've been using Goodreads for the past, I don't know, 10 years, I guess, is not really for the community aspect. I use it to catalog all the books that I've read, to know that I have, you know, I don't have to just rely on my memory of all the books that I've read. I don't use it for the social media aspect. It's actually one of the things that I kind of have grown to not really like about Goodreads, because I don't like seeing other people's reviews when I'm scrolling to read a synopsis of a book, because that like automatically sways me to, you know, one opinion or the other, and I don't particularly like that. And I also have, now that I've gotten older, I feel a lot more like I want to be more private and like having a Goodreads where I can add just random people from around the world as my friends, or they can see my profile or anything like that, just doesn't feel like the private internet life that I want. It also makes me feel like I have to I can't say the wrong thing when I'm reviewing a book or something like that. Like there was this, and it's probably like my own internal kind of pressure or whatever, but I don't like that. I read for fun. I've always said this. I read for fun. I read whatever I'm in the mood for. So that's one thing I don't like about Goodreads, and that's one thing that I really like about Storygraph, because in Storygraph you can decide whether or not you want to make your profile private or semi-private or public. So I really like that. For the time being, I think I'm gonna keep it private, just because I don't really like feeling like I'm being judged by the books that I read. I don't like, I already have a YouTube. This is as public as I'll ever get with my life, and that's only sharing, like, what do I share on here? Like my reading and my knitting. So that's all I'm gonna do online, really. I don't really want to share anymore. And yeah, I also don't like that I feel sort of swayed on Goodreads, because I see like a lot of my friends are reading one thing and I'm like, oh, maybe I should read that. Or it's, I didn't enjoy a book and then I see a lot of people reading it and enjoying it, and I feel a little bit like, oh, is there something wrong with me? You know, like that part of it I don't really like. So I like that Storygraph hides the reviews, and you have a choice whether or not you want to see other people's reviews. The other thing that I like about Storygraph is the rating system. So you don't have to rate it in star reviews if you don't want to. My version of a 5-star read is different to Andrew's version of a 5-star read, or one of my friends' version of a 5-star read, you know, like it depends on the person. And with Goodreads you kind of can't really specify that unless you write a review, and a lot of the times I don't want to write a full review about why I didn't like a book or why I think this book is good. So with Storygraph, when you finish a book, first of all, you have a choice on whether or not you want to add a review. You don't have to, which is really good. And secondly, they focus more on moods, which I think is my favorite part of the reviewing system on Storygraph. Because an example of this is my feelings towards a book that I read last year, I think it was last year or the year before, called Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I have the physical copy there. I've kept it because I'm a little bit confused by this book, and here's why. It's a book that deals with a really hard topic. It's a book about a woman who has a particular mental illness, but the author never specifies what that mental illness is, and you only see it from its symptoms and how this particular character experiences this particular mental illness. And the reason the author did that is because apparently this particular mental illness is very stigmatized, and it's like very wrongly stigmatized or something like that. So we don't really know, as we're reading the book, we don't really know what this person is suffering from, because that's not the point of the book. Now, reading it, I didn't have a really good time reading it. I found it to be really hard to read because the main character wasn't very likable, and the decisions that this main character made weren't very likable to me. But at the same time, so judging from my own personal emotions about this book, you would think that I would have given this book a 2-star or a 3-star, but I think that it's a really important book. I think that it was well written, well done, well explored, well discussed. So I gave this book 4 stars. But I gave this book 4 stars not because of my own emotion while reading it. Like, I would never read this book again, and I would be very careful to recommend this book to someone. But then I don't know why I find it hard not to give it a 4 stars, because I think that it's still well written and well executed for what the author was trying to do. Does that make sense? So I like that Storygraph has those moods, whether something is lighthearted or sad or emotional or funny or informative or reflective. They have a lot of those words, those moods, vibes that you can use to describe a book without giving it like a star rating. And I think that is way more helpful than just giving something a 5-star or a 1-star, because yeah, it's a lot more nuanced than that. It's a lot to do with how you felt about a book and how a book makes you feel, and I like that about it. So I want to touch on a little bit more on the statistics aspect or feature of Storygraph. Like I said in the beginning, the reason why I started was because I wanted to know my reading habits, and I also find it, so far at least, I find it really interesting to know because they have the mood aspect that goes into the statistics as well. So I find it really interesting to understand a little bit more of my reading habit in terms of moods. So for example, I discovered by trying to play around with the stats and everything like that, that even though I read a lot of books that are lighthearted, I actually, when I compare that to the pie graph of books that I own, which is books that I think are good enough to keep basically, or good enough to even get a physical copy of, I actually own more books that are dark/emotional. And I was discussing this with my friend, and that actually makes a lot of sense. She pointed out that maybe it's because I read a lot of these light-hearted romances as more of a palate cleanser and as more of a safe zone. Like, I love light-hearted romances. I read a lot of them because they have a formula that I understand. They have a formula that I can see coming, and that are very predictable, and there's nothing wrong with predictability. I like those predictable light-hearted romances because they just, like I said, they're a palate cleanser. They just, I know exactly what I'm getting from it, and sometimes that's what I need. But I don't actually find them all that impressive a lot of the times. It's very hard for me to keep a romance book. Even though I say that romance is one of my favorite genres, I don't actually own a lot of romances. I own a lot of the emotional books that I would say aren't romances, but they're more love stories, whether that's like a devastating love story or like a love story that turned into like a grief story. Like emotional books, sad and emotional books, those are the books that I end up keeping, because those are the books that I find speak to me a little bit more, or like have more to say, and so I remember them a lot more and I want to keep them a lot more. So I thought that that was really interesting to see that. The last thing that I want to touch on again is the layout and the accessibility of the site. Like I said before, when I first went onto it, it was really hard for me to see the website, because everything was white and light blue, and that's not a good combination. I've been speaking to someone who is going to help me with a lot of technology, like a lot of my computer and the accessibility stuff, and I was discussing with her over the phone about how websites these days aren't very good, and she said that because she works for a company that kind of helps people like me deal with all that stuff, and she said that their company is actually doing a lot of talks to get these like website designers and like business owners and stuff who have websites to understand that, like, yes, I know that you're trying to do that marketing thing where everything is punchy and bright and like, or even like that like minimalist kind of style that everyone's gone for. That's not accessible for a lot of people who don't have 20/20 vision. And so when I found out that not only did storygraph change their layout, made it more clean, made it more of a contrasting color, and also how easy and like non-cluttered their website was, that just makes me so happy, because I can see everything so clearly. Even though something is slightly small, I can still see it because it's a different color to another thing and it has more contrast to it. One of my not pet peeves, but one of the websites that I find so infuriating to use, which is why I don't buy clothes from them anymore, is Zara. I used to buy clothes from Zara a lot more, but the nearest Zara store to me is like an hour and a half to 2 hours away. So you'd think that it would be easy if I wanted to buy clothes from them, which I don't really anyway now, but when I did want to buy clothes from them, I would go to their website, but their website is the worst. I understand that they're trying to go for this like minimalist, like everything is white and then you just see the big pictures, and then the text is so tiny at the very, very bottom of the pictures of these big, you know, like models and stuff like that. But I cannot see what part of the outfit that the model is wearing that you're trying to sell to me right now, because I cannot see. And then don't get me started on the colors. The colors are useless. I hate descriptive colors like stone. What color is a stone? There's so many different colors of stone. You need to specify to me what color you're trying to describe to me right now. Anyway, so yeah, I just want to highlight that the design of the app and the design of the website is so good. So good. So yeah, I think that is everything that I have on my mind when it comes to this website right now. I will let you know at the end of the year my overall thoughts, because obviously I've only been using this app or this website for 3 weeks, so things could change. There is, you know, another side to why I'm switching over from Goodreads to the storygraph, and it does have a lot to do with Amazon and all that stuff, but I am not the one to discuss all of that. If you didn't know that Goodreads was owned by Amazon, they are, so, you know, do with that what you will. But yeah, just because I do have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'm not, you know, I'm still learning everything about that, and I also don't want to discuss any of that in my videos, because I don't want to fight with people on the internet. So like, I am trying to be a little bit more conscious of all that stuff. So I am trying to like make my own decisions, I guess, on certain things that I want to use and certain things that I want to utilize, and sort of like make my own educated decisions on it. So like, for example, like we don't use any streaming services. When we say that we don't have Netflix, we don't just not have Netflix, we don't have Binge, Stan, Paramount, Amazon, whatever. And like, that is, you know, a conscious decision that we decided to make, and so I'm trying to do that with, you know, my book thing as well. But I also understand that there are certain things, like the fact that I still have an Audible membership, because it is, I would count as really important and essential, just because of my own personal preference. So like, not to get too into it, but like, I have loved, like, reading is one of my favorite things to do in my whole life. Like, I've always loved reading. However, my eye condition and the way it's progressing has prevented me to read physical books, you know, print books, easily. And so an audiobook subscription that is like really good and has a lot to it, and that is something that I am willing to pay for. You don't have to if you feel like you don't want to support, you know, Amazon, but that is just one thing that is essential to me, and it is important for me to be able to read books, because I've been able to accept the fact that there are certain things that I can't do in the world because of my eyes, but reading is just not one of them at the moment, and I don't think it's one that I can come to terms with in the near future either. So yeah, I understand that I'm, you know, kind of like going back and forth with this whole Amazon thing, but like, I don't know, I'm still working it out. So yeah, anyway, that is everything from me today, and let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you next time.